And Simon, it takes a lot of bravado to show up in front of us to answer, because we're going to ask straight and lucid questions, and we do thank you for doing that. We also thank you for being part of what allows participatory democracy to be what it is. So we all thank you very much for being here. So I'd like to start off with a couple of questions. One is, who out of the last, say, 15 years in state or local government, can you name two people that you feel have given you some sort of vision, or someone that you feel is part of your way of working? And take about a minute for each person.
Are you speaking about in the legislature?
Anywhere in state government, local or state government?
Yeah. So I was involved in the Board of Land and Natural Resources for some time. Sorry, I was involved in the Board of Agriculture for some time, and the governor appointed me to be on that board. And so I got to have a close-up view of the real politic of things like regulating the biotech companies. And so I would say, somebody who helped me understand how government works pretty well was Scott Enright, because he was the chair of the Department of Agriculture. And we've had a lot of conversations over the years of the legislature appropriates funds for food security through the barrel tax, and also how the agencies do or do not work, because they're all volunteer. Another person that's really been a guide to me, I would say, has been Russell Ruderman in the state Senate. He always speaks his mind. He's true to his heart. He serves the INA and the people. He's been punished for it, no doubt. And that bothers me a lot. What I think needs to happen is organizations like yours need to support progressive candidates, so we can have a progressive caucus in the House and the Senate, hopefully. But I'm running for House, so my goal is to get elected and be part of a progressive caucus with Wildberger, who's also a role model of mine. I get along well with her, and she's very, very helpful and informative. So I would say I have good relationships at the state legislature and throughout some of the agencies that I've developed over the years.
Thank you for that. So you're going against an incumbent that's been there for, I believe, 22 years now. So he's proven to be a successful campaigner, and a person that's been able to survive several people who've gone to decided to run against him. What is it that you believe that you're bringing to the table to offer the people of upcountry that is going to get them to vote for you versus the incumbent that they voted for the last 22 years?
Thank you for the question. My understanding of the incumbent is he was elected in 2003, lost to a Republican in 2005, and then actually won the seat back in 2007.
Right.
So the incumbent has a certain way of conducting himself. Let's just say he's able, I call it pork politics. That's not an insult. It's just, he has the capacity throughout the relationships that he's developed over the years to bring home those capital improvement project funds, because he's the CIP chair. CIP stands for Capital Improvement Projects. And as the chair, he gets to hand out those funds, which is a very powerful position in the State House of Representatives. However, what I offer upcountry is new policies. Well, we can just look to the water meter list. Most people who know about water understand that it's under state jurisdiction. And how come in all those years, these 3,000 people are still waiting for their water meters? Nowhere else in Maui has that problem, waiting for decades for a water meter, dying of old age, waiting for a water meter. So my job as a representative in the House and a state legislature will be water security for upcountry, for farmers and ranchers, for generational families who would like to have another water meter on their land so they can give a piece of land to their children to build a house on, because without a water meter, you can't really, you don't have the fixture count, they say, from the planning department to build a home. So that's one aspect of what I have to offer upcountry citizens and voters. Does that answer the question?
Well, that's one of the questions. So what are you offering to the people that live in Makawao Town and Pukalani Town, which is part of the major demographics of the area? They're not looking for a water meter. What else are you offering to the people of upcountry?
Well, I would like to
1 minute.
offer them relief from the State Department of Health, which has mandated that anytime they do a upgrade to their home, an improvement will require them to upgrade their wastewater system. We can find alternatives to what's currently mandated, which is a septic tank and a leach field. There's cesspool upgrades that are currently available using safe and modern methods that will be greatly much cheaper than what is currently being suggested by the State Department of Health. So I will be a strong advocate for Makawao residents, where I live, the State Department of Health, to make sure that we can afford to upgrade our wastewater systems without getting bankrupted or having to leave.
Okay, thank you for your time. Daniel, you ready to go next?
Aloha. Hey,
Aloha.
Daniel Smith there. Good to see you this time, and thank you for showing up today. I'm always glad to see when someone does show up. So thank you for this. I have a few questions, but I'm going to start with a good one. As a public representative, it is a duty to face the truth and to act righteously. These islands reflect the lowest voter turnout in the United States. On May 15th, 2019, Dr. David Kianusai gave a presentation to the Maui County Council, evidencing the illegal overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani in 1893 and showing clear violation of domestic and international law with the ongoing illegal United States military occupation of the Kingdom of the Hawaiian Islands. As a candidate for public representation, how do you rectify handling the truth of Dr. Sai's presentation, as well as the works of Keamoku Kapu, Henry Noah, Amelia Gora, Pumpi Kanahele, Leon Su, Dr. Desaias, Madame Ruth Bolame, the Kohawaii Pai'aina office in Hilo, etc.? How do you rectify the compliance of the law in restoration of occupied lands?
Thank you for the question, Daniel. So as a candidate for the State House of Representatives, I have taken an oath to uphold and defend not only the Constitution of the United States of America, but that of the state of Hawaii. So I know that some people call it a fake state. And I just, as a solutionary, I can't go there. I would be a peacemaker and advocate for the people who live in my district in this issue. It's a very, very tough question. I recognize that this is the biggest problem, perhaps, that faces this community, this whole Hawaii Pai'aina, and it is the illegal overthrow. Colonialism is a part of much of history of the United States of America and its predecessor, the Kingdom of England. How to fix that is a generational question. I think recognizing the crime that was committed is the first step. Just like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. If you have a problem, the first step is to admit that you have a problem. Well, we have a problem, absolutely. And how to fix it, that's it's going to take everybody, recognizing. I went to school here, grade school through college, and I'll tell you what, there was almost no recognition of what you just talked about in my whole education. Matter of fact, my my high school teacher, I took Hawaiian studies in high school, and they rolled out a television. We watched the Brady Bunch, and I'm not joking about that. I'm very resentful of it. And what you just talked about, the Ko Hawaii Pai'aina and the overthrow, I had to teach myself on Wikipedia and learn from my friends. So it's horrific. It's cultural genocide, the max. And as a representative in the state house, I would, move towards legislation to at least make sure people are educated as to what happened. But, it's going to be a generation or more before this problem is solved. I think peacefully discussing it is the right way to move forward and come to solutions.
Okay, mahalo, Simon. I'm going to pass the question on and I'll come back.
Bruce, are you ready? Or Paul? Which one you'd like to take? Okay, go ahead, Bruce.
Hi, Mr. Simon Russell. Aloha.
Aloha.
Greetings from your attic.
This is my attic.
It is your attic. So the big thing for everybody right now is recovering from the so-called pandemic and economic recovery and how to shift an economy so we're not so dependent on tourism. If elected, what would be your ideas and plans and how we can recover as a community, particularly the upcountry community, and what it would take to make this shift into a less tourist-based economy?
Thank you for that question, Bruce. I have been thinking about this for a very long time before the crisis came. Because I actually come from Kauai, I had the experience of going through a hurricane where if it wasn't for the National Guard, we all would have starved to death. So food security has been a passion of mine. I think step one, secure our food supply, make sure that we can feed ourselves out here in the most isolated place on the planet. It's been too long already. We've been talking about food security and the fact that we need to be able to feed ourselves. So having state and county policies that support agriculture would be a really good first step. It's a no-brainer. Everybody supports it. It's politically doable. I think a next big step would be to use local, county, state, and federal funds to have public works projects, starting with our watersheds. Our watersheds are in tragic state of affairs with invasive species everywhere, infrastructure crumbling, severe lack of access to the water delivery systems. We can use hundreds of millions of dollars from the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Development, combined with state special purpose revenue bonds and county funds to replant our watersheds with native species that will attract more types of clouds that support the water cycle. These droughts that we're going through are very dangerous. Last year, I think it rained about a half an inch in Pi'iholo in 6 months. Very uncommon. We need to restore watersheds with public works projects. That would be another huge step forward for helping the local economy, securing our water for the future generation. And lastly, we need low-income housing for folk. And I think as a state legislature, I would advocate for projects on state land, specifically the land around the airport. There's a bunch of land down there owned by the Department of Transportation. We could put low-income housing down there for our state employees. That'd be a no-brainer, especially the Department of Education workforce. I think teachers need to be Malamed, and you can go to my website, russell2020.org, and read some more details about that. But I think public works programs in the watersheds, low-income housing for state workforce would be two large steps combined with food security that could really help diversify the economy and help our local people.
Thank you. On that same vein, how would you feel about the use of eminent domain to make the water delivery system, the EMI ditch system, into a public trust? And part two, how would you feel about eminent domain to buy back the former sugarcane plantations and make that a public trust resource?
That would be my kind of last resort if we can't make a deal. But regarding the water delivery system, Upcountry Maui needs to have control of that. Currently, we're being abused, in my opinion. And last week, there was a Supreme Court case where some of the people giving testimony were saying that 2/3 of the water the Upcountry uses comes from the EMI Kamole system. We really need to have local control of that resource. Currently, it's controlled by a Canadian pension fund and its subsidiary Mahipono. I'm not going to badmouth Mahipono, but local people need to have control of the water so that we have water security for generations and foreign companies aren't profiting off our extremely valuable, priceless, and sacred vai.
And how about the Mahipono farmland? Do you consider using eminent domain if the alternative wasn't found to put that back in the public as a public trust resource?
You mean the state of Hawaii should declare eminent domain on it, or somebody else, the county?
County or state. County preferably. It would take state assistance in order to do a bond initiative, so it would take a lot of help from our state legislators.
Well, I'd have to know what the plan was. Currently, they have a lot of money going into that land. I'm more concerned about the water. That would not be my first priority, Bruce. The water is.
Okay. All right. I will pass it on to the next person.
So, Simon, I'd like to continue then the same questioning around water because it's such a vital issue, especially when we look at it as the lifeblood of the island, and also it really does determine our development, where developments do occur, and what type of crops we're able to have. So if we go down, though, and look at the root of what's fixating the system that has perpetuated so long, and we go to the state level, do you see it a necessity for full financial disclosure and transparency for members of the Board of Land and Natural Resources who effectively make decisions involving hundreds of millions of dollars of natural resources, often for the benefit of private concerns? What would you do to change the system that we have at this point in time?
That's a great question, Paul. I do think they have some sort of financial disclosure. I was on one of those boards. Certainly, we had to file that every year, all of our assets and our essentially liabilities and sorts of financial things, any debts we had. Regarding the land board itself, the Department of Land and Natural Resources Board of Directors, I think we need to stop the appointment process, because I know through sources I've talked to that those are called patronage positions. And when someone helps a governor get elected, that's when they get appointed to those types of positions. And that position oversees billions of dollars worth of land and other types of public trust resources. So I think that those folks need to actually be employees of the state of Hawaii, just like I'm an employee of the United States Department of Agriculture, one of their boards. I'm on a state committee overseeing tens of millions of dollars of programs, and I get paid and I'm held accountable. There's full transparency. So that's what I would advocate for. Legislation to stop the appointment of these extremely powerful individuals and hold them accountable through a paycheck, and empower them to do also a better job, because when a board member is actually paid to read documents, they can make more informed decisions. If you get a 5-pound document, say on a Friday night, and you're supposed to read it by a Monday morning meeting, there's no way that you can do a really good job. And their agenda is massive. is massive. I've been to some of their hearings and looked at their agendas, and they're hundreds of pages long. So that should not be a volunteer position. And empowering them with a paycheck and putting them on the state payroll would go a long way to hold them accountable. It'd be a
Right.
real service to the community too.
What would you suggest in terms of a vetting process for these officials then? If it's not going to be appointed and it's not going to be, something of patronage or, supporting some gift back, what would be the criteria that would be important in terms of selecting these types of representation?
Well, I mean, ideally, they'd have someone like a hydrologist on there, civil engineer, real estate attorney. I mean, these folks really make some heavy weighted decisions regarding the assets, including the boat harbors, including Honolulu Harbor, including the top of the Mauna. And there should be scientists, attorneys, engineers, those types of people on there with the capacity to do a dang good job for us, the citizens, and our public trust.
And that level of expertise is not present at this point in time then, because I hear that if it's an appointed position that's based on some type of favoritism, then again, the community is not benefiting from having experts in those different arenas. Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, some of them may have those types of degrees, but based on their decisions that I've seen, I'm pretty disappointed. So, except for a few of them, like Stan Rohrig comes to mind. He was a really good one, and as soon as he spoke his mind, the governor got rid of him. So, we need better advocates for the public trust and people who know what the Constitution means. I know there's attorneys on there, and I know the chair is an attorney, the Board of Land and Natural Resource Director, and others. And I don't know their exact education background, but I do know that after the governor appoints them, they're nominated or they're confirmed by the Senate. But one, would imagine that that there's that vetting process, but I think we can do better. I mean, Mauna Kea just speaks volumes to the fact that we can do better. East Maui water, we can do way better. Kauai has issues with water, we can do better, and on and on.
Great. Thank you, Simon. I'm going to pass it on to Sean next. And Bruce, if you could mute yourself, that'd be great.
Thanks, Simon. I'm going to keep burrowing down into what you are going to do for the people of your district. I've heard two things, but I want to hear more. I've lived up country off and on. I built a small farm up there where there's some challenges. I want to hear what you're going to do for more than water meter, and talk to me. I lived up there for 15 years and built a farm, thousands of hours with these hands. And also I have friends that live in Makawao that have had a place there for almost 100 years. I got people in Pukalani that have been there for 6 years, and they've come from Off Island and they work 10-hour days. What are you going to do for these people that are different? How are you going to get in office? What are you going to do to wake them up, to get them to vote for you instead of the person they've been voting for up to now?
Well, thanks for the question, Sean. First thing I'm going to do is not tell them things that baloney. The state of Hawaii only has specific powers, and the county has way more power locally as far as doing things for people. What I plan to do is really scrutinize the Department of Education. I have 4 children, and I would like it to be way more functional for upcountry citizens and their generations to come. I want Kumu to be honored. I want them to have free college education if they commit to a long-term contract with the DOE. I want them to have subsidized housing. I want I do want that cesspool problem to go away from the Department of Health. It is ridiculous to claim that upcountry cesspools are contaminating the groundwater thousands of feet below our feet. It's not believable, and I don't think the science shows that we are a problem up here. And so intervening with the State Department of Health and the State Department of Education as an advocate for us, for our community, is something that everybody up here can count on me for. The other big thing that I would like to see change is any more deaths on the state highway. The death of the gentleman on the Kamali'i Highway going up to the crater was really tragic. I'm so sorry I can't remember his name right now, but we need to have quicker pull-offs so that people coming down the mountain can safely go around the bikers. You know, that's something the state of Hawaii can do. You know, so my passion is education, providing feedback, oversight, and support to the Department of Education. And let's not forget agriculture, of course. As a generational farmer from Hawaii, I care deeply about our ag community, and there's a lot of ag community up here. Makawao itself has quite some ag community, and I support farming, ranching, aquaculture, aquaponics, nurserymen, women. And the state of Hawaii has really no history of supporting agriculture. When you look at its budget for agriculture, it is tragic.
I have a question for you there. You know, there's a movement in the state, in the county of Maui, to start a county Department of Agriculture that would be of the same level as any other department, to actually say, screw the state, we're ready to move up and start taking care of things locally. The sound from different islands, as I listen to the different islands, is we're tired of the state. We need to take care of things locally. Would you back a county-driven Department of Agriculture, and would you work with that on the state level to help the small farmer who is literally buried, in the morass of the paperwork and infrastructure of a state that looks at us basically as a backwater? What would you do to help? What would you do to help? Take care of that. We're in the state will never be the same again. We are in a place now where our tourist-driven industry is going to shift. It may shift perceptibly. It may be a large shift. They have this moment of time where things are different. What is that you're going to do differently? Number one, would you back the Department of Agriculture on the county level? And would you help to work with diversification and funding of that on the state level if necessary? And number two, what is that you're going to bring in this kind of new paradigm that's different than we've seen from Mr. Yamashita?
I will bring my experience as a farmer and a parent immediately to the equation. I will support a county level Department of Education, county level Department of Agriculture, if that's something that the council wants to build out. I spoke with Councilman Mike White about this about 8 years ago, and he said we don't want anything like that. So we have a different council now, and perhaps they would like to pay for that, all those employees. I can tell you that the USDA has a ton of money for agriculture, because I work for them and I see their budget. If Hawaii tripled its USDA budget, right now it's around 90 million, nobody would notice in Washington, D.C. because it's so tiny in retrospect. Would you help on the state level, the county, if that's what is decided to do by the people of Maui County and of your district? If they decided they really wanted to set this up to help effectively increase the efficiency and take some of the stress off the local farmers, would you work? How strongly would you work with the local county infrastructure to have that happen? I would do whatever I could to support that, Sean. I am a local farmer, and I know what programs are available from the state and the feds and the county. And the county is finally starting to put out some money for agriculture. I think they just recently appropriated over $3 million in grant money to the Office of Economic Development for Agriculture on Maui. So yes, I will support that. And more broadly, I support home rule. I support devolving anything from the state of Hawaii that's ineffective to the county level if the county can shoulder the responsibility and pay for it. You know, that's fine. I do not like the state of Honolulu telling us how to locate our water. You know, how about all of the land that the Department of Land and Natural Resources was supposed to give over to farmers through the Department of Ag 17 years ago, and they still haven't done it. That's called Act 90. That's something that I'll work on immediately, enforcing the laws that exist on the books. One of the biggest issues with the state of Hawaii is they don't enforce their own laws, or they have selective enforcement much of the time, or they have complaint-driven enforcement. And that's the whole problem with water. You know, the water situation could have sorted itself out decades ago if the interim in-stream flow standards had been set after they were supposed to in 1985. You know, now, 35 years later, we still don't have stream flow standards, and big ag companies are taking way too much. So once those standards are set, we'll know how much money is available for agriculture in the Central Valley. And after Hawaiians in East Maui and the nature in East Maui and upcountry users get done with their fair share, and the DHHL land in Kanaio and Ulapalakua and Hikinui get their fair share, then we'll see how much is left in the stream. You know, but currently it's terrible. The state won't do its job, and that's why there was a Supreme Court case the other day. So regarding home rule and having a local Department of Agriculture, absolutely. We just have to see the county stand that up, and if the mayor supports it and all of that, I mean, it's a big job, but I would support that.
Okay, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Your time. So, who's next? Daniel? You got more? Okay, go ahead.
Cool. Great. Thanks, Sean. Simon, I appreciate all of your reflections that you've given. I want you to get to the core. Like, what's that moment that had inspired you to run for office at this time? What was that?
Well, in the legislative session of 2019, there was a piece of legislation called House Bill 1326, which granted a 10-year extension on the revocable permits given to Alexander and Baldwin's company, EMI, which is half owned by Mahi Pono now. So I did not support that because the state of Hawaii hadn't been following its own rules for, like I said earlier, 35 years with the interim in-stream flow standards. They just take, you know, and there's no science showing that what they take is okay. So when that bill came forward and my representative decided to vote for it, I decided that maybe it was time to have a different representative there. And so I enrolled in the Kuleana Academy and got trained to run as a candidate for state office. So really, House Bill 1326 kicked my passion into gear.
Oh, great. Okay, so during that time, do you feel that decision was made on behalf of the people? Like, you're coming from up country and you say, hey, House Bill 1326, I don't support it, but your representative did. Was that were you the minority there, or what happened?
I lobbied like crazy. I bought a pack of tickets to Honolulu and flew over there 21 times to lobby legislators to kill that bill. And we did. We were very effective. We went to the legislature. We looked them right in the eye as they were about to take their vote in the Senate. I personally lobbied Clarence Nishihara, who is from Makawao, and let him know that the bill did not need to pass for upcountry water users to have all the water they need, because water comes to us from gravity through ditches. Like, turn it off is not even thinkable. Like, we are the people, we are the public trust. So I was there for the people and the Aina. That's why I went there. My company that I took time to register as a lobbyist is called Hui Omalama Aina. And that's what I care about. I care about the Aina. I care about my children's future in this community. And that's why I went. Because we're being propagandized. We're used for propaganda by a very large corporation that didn't really do the type of community engagement that they should have to get our mana'o before they went and lobbied the state of Honolulu.
So would you say that is a perfect example of the people's voice not being heard in the state by their own representative?
Amen.
What is a community issue that you've seen that has been solved?
A community issue
Perhaps
that
people's
has,
voices have, yeah, like perhaps the community's voice was heard amongst a trying issue. Is there any that you can recall?
I mean, the GMO moratorium was one, except our government decided not to enforce it.
Yeah, that was kind of a situation, wasn't it? Was there any insight that you had in that situation that could help?
Well, it comes down to home rule. If we would have had a county level Department of Agriculture, that bill would have been enforced and upheld. It was mainly because the state of Hawaii has the jurisdiction over pesticide and GMO regulation that bill died.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it on to Paul here.
Hi, Simon. Simon, hi. You mentioned that your 4 children, and you also went to school in Kauai and also here. Again, with your experience of the education system, and you see that it's an Oahu-centric system, where a tremendous amount of our tax money then for education goes to Oahu, and then maybe not that much comes back, and certainly it perpetuates the difficulties and challenge we've had in terms of giving teachers rates of pay that allows them then not to be stressed. Or we have so many teachers who are not qualified coming in to our system. Could you address then the whole education system, this this kind of framework that we have in Oahu, and what would you do to change that?
Well, that's a great question. Again, Paul, thank you. The state of Hawaii is the only state, if you want to call it that, in the United States that has a unified school district, meaning our DOE, our Department of Education, covers every county. It's not like that in any other place in America. So that should be studied. Like, what are the results of our unified school district? Is it doing its job? I don't want to insult hardworking Department of Education workforce and pass judgment on them, but everybody knows we can do better, and we should do better, especially because it really is a lot of money going into that system. I think the Department of Education budget is over 20% of the state budget. It's a huge chunk. So we taxpayers need to be getting more for our money. And the last time I ran for office, I ran a campaign of saying decentralize the Department of Education and have local school districts. I know that's politically very difficult. And so the Hawaii State Teachers Association doesn't support that. But what I can say is the first step would be to malama the teachers and make sure they can afford to live here, because one of the biggest problems that jumps right out at you when you look at the facts is that 60% of the new hires quit within 2 years. That's no kind of succession plan for our Department of Education workforce, and it's downright scary as a parent, I'll tell you what. So we need to offer them an affordable career choice. Like the last time I ran for office, I was having a fundraiser and some waitresses were waiting my table, and then one of the waitresses who was waiting, I was asking for her support, and she said, "Oh, what would you do for the Department of Education? I'm a teacher." And I said, "Wow, you're also waiting my table." And she's like, "Yeah, I have to be able to afford crayons and pens and paper because the DOE doesn't pay for that, and also I can't live on my salary." So they need a living wage. And we need to understand that many of the issues in our communities come from a somewhat dysfunctional education system here. It's the fact that I wasn't educated in the overthrow is a great, point to make. We weren't really taught the real history of Hawaii when I went to school. I don't know if they are yet. So what would I do? I think we should do some really in-depth studies about what kinds of alternatives are viable, whether it's vouchers or, I'm wondering where the Department of Education is going to get any money at all right now because the hotels are shut down. The state of Hawaii is going to have a financial crisis like nobody's ever seen in the next 12 months. And it's way beyond Great Depression. Hawaii was doing okay during the Great Depression. We had 7% unemployment. Right now we have 30. It's, what's coming down for the DOE is extremely concerning for me, and it would be my top priority to understand how to support the Kumu and make sure the kids are getting a good education.
So would you then support and asking for some type of audit of the Department of Education here in Hawaii, and then make sure that especially if our budgets are going to be trimmed quite a bit, that those resources are not going towards administration, as so much of a large percentage of the budget has gone, but that it goes to the teachers and the schools and the students and supporting them with supplies and other basics?
I think an audit is a great place to start, looking at how to fix any financial shortcomings the Department of Education would be having, and I would definitely support that, yes. And make sure, through the appropriations process that the priorities would be teachers and the workforce and the students rather than a top-heavy administration.
Great. Thank you. Bruce, do you have the next question? You want to unmute yourself?
Yes. Simon, there's a major problem in Maui County in general and upcountry with the ice epidemic as well as alcoholism. And there's very little support for people. I've had personal people I've tried to find help for, and there's very little programmers or support for people who are trying to get off of addiction. So you as a state legislature, what would you do to improve that situation?
One of the first things I would move towards is, more treatment, less incarceration. It's way cheaper to treat people than to put them in a box, in a cage. Another big step would be to legalize marijuana. When I was growing up, we had no problem with ice or, these other really hardcore drugs, so to speak. There was really an abundance of marijuana, and it was a big part of the economy. I think it should be again. That will relieve a lot of the need for people to use, so to speak.
All right, thank you. And what would be your solutions for the housing crisis that we are facing right now?
Well, I think one of the biggest costs of housing is land. So there is a lot of state-owned land in Maui, and we should look at the best parcels to develop villages and develop villages that are for low-income people, people below 60% of the adjusted mean income, and make sure that they can afford their home. How they do that in this economy is a giant question, but I think that goes back to the public works programs that I'm going to advocate for when I'm elected, to restore our watersheds, to build these affordable homes for our teachers and other state workforce. So those jobs will ideally afford local people the homes that they need and want. Public housing,
Yeah. And we're about to approach an era of balancing a budget that's not going to have as much income coming in for the state. That means there's going to be budget cuts and shifts in governance. and payments. What do you see in that big picture that could work in order to balance our state budget?
Well, the governor's already saying either we're going to have a 20% pay cut for the state workforce, or legislature needs to give me authorization to borrow $2 billion. So that's a heck of a question, Bruce. It's above my pay grade to answer that. But I think we got to get our community to work. You know, sitting around sheltering in place isn't helping the economy at all. So given that there's really no tourism jobs, we need to hurry up and make other kind of jobs. And I think making sure that our island always has a stable water supply, gotta be right on the top of the list.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
So I do have a couple of things to put in. One of the nice things about spending a lot of time asking questions of people that are both in power and hoping to be in power is that you get a lot of input. And part of what we heard from the input from both Tina Wildberger as well as one of the representatives is that the State Department of Health, the State Department of Education, the State Department of Transportation, all of these different offices are running on antiquated systems with people that are not brought up to speed, nor do they have an ability to do anything besides just simply keep the process basically going as it was before. We see it with the unemployment. Every single part of our process is not only broken, but inept, corrupt, and underfunded, and understaffed, and unenlightened. That's the state of our state. The systems that we need in place right now to be able to bring tourism back, to be able to ensure that agriculture is taken care of correctly, to make sure that our water systems are effectively taken care of, to make sure that our unemployment is taken care of, they don't work. Every single day, every person here sees that. So one of the questions will be, what do you see in 90 seconds that you're going to do as far as this side of it's concerned, or what do you see as an ability to change that part of the paradigm as a state legislator?
I love that question. Thank you, Sean. Accountability and transparency, that's how to govern, in my opinion. You can't govern without the facts. And so much of what happens in the legislature is opaque, is decided because somebody feels a certain way about somebody else. And it takes 6 years to pass a piece of legislation. I think the answer to your question really lies in home rule, more home rule, the state of Honolulu. And those antiquated systems, I was a member of the board of agriculture, and yeah, the systems are very antiquated. I know that there was an audit requested of the Agribusiness Development Corporation, and nothing ever happened. And I heard nothing good about their systems of accountability and transparency, and they oversee tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of public assets, including real estate and infrastructure. How to fix the problem is with shining a light on that bugger. We got to ask the tough questions. We got to sit there at those meetings, understand what the problem is, and come up with solutions. Complaining about it is not going to fix anything. And as long as we have a state of Hawaii, let's make it work better for the people, and it starts with shining a light, having hearings with those departments, getting the real facts, and making educated decisions about how to fix the problem. And if more home rule is the answer, then I think that's what we need. Because I think the way that the state was designed coming out of the territory wasn't designed for what we have now with the massive tourism industry. And it was more of a plantation mindset, which worked at that point, back in the 50s and 60s in the post-war era. But now we have an advanced society that could really thrive in Hawaii. Like we have brilliant minds coming from all over the world. If we can capacitate Kumu to really upgrade our Department of Education and teach the wonderful things to make those departments work better, the hydrology, the education systems, the Department of Taxation itself, I think, is highly broken. It doesn't do much to get money from people when they're in fraudulent. So the state of Hawaii doesn't do well on enforcement, and it really needs people who care in there. And there are some.
That's basically one of the things that comes up, because government and laws are there as a framework, but it's only the quality of the people that you have in that really make a difference. And it's one of the challenges we have. I'm going to have to turn it over to someone else, but I just wanted to put one other thing else out too. Pono doesn't mean doing what's necessarily politically correct or what people like to hear, but Pono means standing in the place of understanding. I do want to put one thing out, and that's the fact that corporations are a two-edged sword. Whenever Mahi Pono bought out the land, there was one person, the lieutenant governor, that stood up and said, "We can't have GMOs on this land." And there was an agreement put in stone that it wouldn't be. So for many years and many millions of dollars and all the time we spent, we were shot down by a mayor and people that didn't care. But yet one person in the right place in a corporate structure was able to make sure that in perpetuity, over 45,000 acres of land would never have GMOs. So we need to take a look at our balance as we're working with things. There are good people that work in corporations. Corporation structure itself may be a challenge, but overall, we have a lot of people in different places, whether we're activists or working on that side. We need to find a common collaboration. That's what's really important. So with that, who's next?
I have just a follow-up question really to what Bruce was talking about. He mentioned about the issues of drug addiction and also the issue of dealing with affordable housing. And one issue that I think is important for us to look at as community is homelessness, especially, as you mentioned, Simon, that we're going into a very more strenuous economic time, and that may create more homelessness. So, and some legislation has recently been passed where they're looking at increasing fines if a person is homeless, so that there is, more fees that have to pay, and also incarceration and other things. What are your thoughts about how to deal with this, and should we take a punitive approach?
You should not take a punitive approach. Absolutely not. I think those people deserve aloha, deserve a chance. They deserve a safe place to be, a shelter, food, healthcare, and ideally they can be, useful members of our community. Like they'll have, what we should do is have people who can find out what their contribution to the community can be, whether they can be helping on farms or mentoring young people or just fixing themselves so that they're not any type of threat to the society. So where those funds come from, I don't know. We're in quite a pickle with regards to public funding right now. I understand the County of Maui has more access to funds than the state of Hawaii because the state is so heavily dependent on the taxes coming from the hotel industry. The County of Maui is less dependent. But again, like for these types of big things, I think local, county, state, and federal partnerships and leaders who will advocate for those people is a big part of the solution. I think the Lieutenant Governor, Josh Green, has managed to use state land on Oahu and get exemptions, I think through the State Office of Planning, to build communities on those lands, tiny homes. And that's a great idea. And we should do that here too, get people off the street, give them some self-dignity, give them a dignified existence, a shower, a hot meal. We don't have to turn them into criminals and beggars. And ideally, especially as we go into this economic crisis, people don't have to live in fear of being houseless in the island they grew up in, or maybe the island they came to. So as a society, as a community, this is a great time to support them, because they're, they can be a resource.
Great. Thank you, Simon.
They don't have to be a
One question I
problem.
do have real quickly.
One more
what
question.
about the possibility? Well, no, this is part of this. It's a really good. What about the possibility of a homeless council? Actually, let the homeless speak for themselves. There are some that have the ability to elucidate and to work. Who can speak better for the community than their own people? It's just a question that no one's asked. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, that gets to kind of county council's housing committee. I mean, if you're calling it homelessness, they should have a subcommittee for people who don't have homes, and they should have seats on that committee and have, be able to give testimony.
Great. Thank you. Daniel, you'll be the last question then.
Okay. All right. We got one more question, a few minutes here. Simon, now we've been talking a lot about the economy and how fragile this situation really is. Now, after this post-plantation situation with the dependency on tourism, and now with the COVID, we're looking at perhaps even a post-tourism situation where these lands need to have this sustainability. So you mentioned, number one, stable water supply. Like, what are we looking at as far as an economic recovery post-COVID, post-tourism, post-plantation? What do you see as a farmer and a father?
Well, thank you, Daniel, for that question. I have great hope for our future. I mean, we have this community of highly intelligent people. I mean, look at your panel right here. You guys have engineering degrees and are motivated and active and talking about solutions every day, I'm sure. So I think with modern technology like 3D printing and the ability to grow all year round, we could grow building grade bamboo here and print plywood and structural beams out of bamboo and other materials like hemp. And we could grow houses of the future right out of our fields. And I think, one of the main blockades to that is imagination and the cost of labor. If we can provide affordable housing to farmers, and this is a huge passion of mine that I haven't really had a chance to talk about too much, but making sure that farmers can actually live on their farms affordably and make farming an affordable career choice will be a huge component of food security and food, fuel, and fiber solutions of our future. We can grow energy, we can grow food, we can grow fiber that can build houses, and I think an acre of hemp and an acre of bamboo can build several houses, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. And it just kind of makes me wonder why nobody's done it yet. And to me, it comes down to imagination and the cost of labor. We just need to get folks together, and this is a great time to do it. Everybody's sitting inside. We can Zoom and have these wonderful discussions of how to get some equipment on site to do the conversion of hemp and bamboo to building grade materials. And I think these projects and the public works programs can really take us out of the plantation era into a new era of diversified, sustainable agriculture, and also really help the economy.
Great. Thank you, Simon, so much, and for giving us some hope. And Bruce, you had one more thing that you wanted to ask. Okay, why don't you do that, and then we'll end. You're on mute, Bruce.
You're muted, Bruce.
Bingo. Simon, would you give me a rundown of your experience in legislature and what qualifies you to be running for this position?
Okay.
In about 3 minutes.
So I've always been interested in governance since I was on the student council at UH and studying the way that that organization works and helping use regents. And then I got really active in the GMO movement here in Maui. I was a founding member of GMO Free Maui, and I got really interested in law and why laws made things a certain way, and specifically policies that develop laws. To such an extent that I decided to run for office in 2012, the first time. The following year, or actually no, that same year, 2012, I was asked to be the legislative committee chairman for the Hawaii Farmers Union United. The legislative committee chair will lobby the legislature and advocate for agriculture policy at the state level. So I spent a lot of time flying back and forth to Honolulu from 2012 all the way up until this legislative session that ended, I think, on March 12th. So I guess for about the last 17 years, I've been really interested in policy and law. And then in the last 8 years, I've been visiting the legislature and advocating for better agriculture policy and for farmers, and for the environment, by the way. So I haven't gotten any bills passed personally because I'm not a lawmaker. But when I am a lawmaker, I intend to stand for the people, for the Aina, food security, for a diversified economy, for our kumu, for the country ohana, for climate change. That's a really urgent situation, and above all, for Aloha Aina. And for my kids.
And do you have any final words that you would like to tell us in your conclusion? How would you like to share? Open question for you.
I just really want to mahalo you all for your years of dedication and your service to vet candidates before elections. And it's really an honor to be answering your questions tonight. And I just want to emphasize that I plan to run on a platform of Aloha Aina, from now until I'm elected. Once I'm in there, accountability and transparency are going to be my guide stars. That's what I care about. Why are things the way they are? How can we make them better? Talking about problems doesn't fix problems. We have to talk about solutions. We have to find common ground. When I'm elected, I plan to work with the neighbor island legislators from all the neighbor islands, including Kauai, Hawaii Island, and here in Maui, so that we have a stronger voice in the state capitol. Not everybody understands that because of the representative democracy, the state of Honolulu is real. Most legislators are from the city and county of Honolulu. Therefore, they're the ones who really get stuff done. And by the way, they have the most money, so that doesn't hurt either. But out of the 76 legislators that are in the legislature, in the Senate, there's 25, and in the House, there's 51. Most of those folks are from the city and county of Honolulu. So I'm elected as your representative. I will be working closely with the neighbor island caucuses to make sure that we have a stronger voice in our legislature. We're not kowtowing to the corporate interests that basically arrived us where we are. I think everybody wants food security. Everybody wants a better education system. Everybody wants those agencies to work better. And why haven't they? I'm not sure, but I'll definitely be reporting back after I'm elected.
And if anyone wanted to send money to you, is there a site or a place where they can give donations or give you funds?
I need everybody's support as much as possible, and people can go to russell2020.org. That's RUSSELL2020.org, and you can support our campaign, Aloha Aina, transparency and accountability, right there. With a contribution to us, and we need to do mailers. We need to get the word out to the community because we're way behind the curve from the COVID crisis. I haven't been able to knock and walk nearly as much as I would have liked. And so I need everybody's support to help get the word out.
Okay.
Great,
Thank
Simon.
you so much, mahalo, for being here.
Russell2020.org. Aloha.
Aloha, Simon. Thank you.
Aloha, Simon. Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, it's for me to see that we have these options, and we're going to look right next at another option that we have, and we're going to talk about Kyle Yamashita's record. So Simon, if you could sign off, and we're going to move on to our next candidate. But thank you so much, and it was just so wonderful to hear about your experience. I mean, 17 years and working on this, I mean, and really to look at the contrast then. We're going to talk about the contrast between what Simon was just talking about in terms of what he is going to be representing versus what Kyle has represented for all these years. So again, Simon, thank you. And we'll sign off.
One last thing, if people want to hear more about what the campaign stands for, you can go to YouTube, Vote Russell Now, also Instagram, Vote Russell, and you'll see all kinds of stuff. Thanks, everybody. Aloha.
Well.